Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the San Martin SN008-G V3. This watch is available from watchdives.com for $339. You can use the discount code WR4K to get $10 discount off any watch over $150 on watchdives.com. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes in this black plastic Pelican style case. I'll show you the interior. As you can see, both halves of the Pelican case are lined with foam panels, so it does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. And I like these style of Pelican cases because they're durable and they make a refreshing change from the default option of using a cardboard watch box. With regards to other items, this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams, and the instructions are in English. It details the operation of the movement use, which is the PT5000 automatic. This is the plastic guarantee card, and on the reverse it's stamped and filled in with the date of purchase. Now usually San Martin watches are covered by a 2-year international warranty. However, if you purchase the watch from watchdives.com, I'm pleased to report the watch is covered by a 3-year international warranty, so one gets an additional 12 months of cover, which is very good. This is the stainless steel spring bar tool that comes with the watch. As you can see, at one end we have a 2-prong fork, and on the other end we have a push pin. And lastly, one also gets this knurled shank stainless steel 1.6mm stainless steel screwdriver, and I think it's good to include this for resizing the screw pins in the bracelet. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the San Martin SN008-G V3. The watch is clearly an homage to the Tudor Black Bay 58, very similar proportions. Now I'll explain the difference between the V1, V2 and V3 respectively. The V1 had male end links, and often collectors were critical of the male end links because they extended the effective overall lug-to-lug measurement of the watch, which meant that for collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, the lug-to-lug measurement was too long with the male end links. So San Martin responded to this feedback from collectors, and they updated the V1 to the V2 with female pivoted end links as per the Tudor Black Bay and the Black Bay 58, and that improved the fit. So the V1 had a rivet link bracelet, and it had male end links, and it also had an S crown. The V2 was updated. It still had the rivet link bracelet, but it now had female pivoted end links and an S crown. This is the latest version, the V3. So they've updated it once again. It has female pivoted end links, it has an oyster bracelet without the rivet links, and they've also updated the crown from the S crown to the San Martin Hex logo crown in this V3. So with regards to the dimensions, we have a 40mm case diameter, we have a 48mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 11.7mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push clasp, and as you can see, the 2-button push clasp is signed to a high standard with an embossed San Martin Hex logo. 4 micro adjustments in the clasp, as you can see. Now, I'm often critical of brands only having 2 or 3 micro adjustments. San Martin have made the correct decision by including 4 micro adjustment holes, which allows for better fine tuning of the length of the bracelet to get the perfect fit. I like the large bevel machined on the edge of the clasp and also on the end of it. It's mirror polished to a very high standard. No sharp edges, no burrs. Brushed satin finish, beautiful luster to the 316L grade stainless steel on the flanks and also the body of the clasp. Good foam resistance to the 2-button push triggers. And the interior is also finished to a high standard with no sharp edges, solid milled 316L grade stainless steel, beautiful luster to the top side, underside and flanks, which are brushed satin finished throughout. Very well executed, nice positive click when closing it, and I like the heavy gauge of 316L grade stainless steel. It's a very well executed clasp, one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So with regards to the rest of the specification, we have a double dome sapphire crystal with blue tinted AR coating on the underside. The blue tinted AR coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver applied indices and the silver mirror polished snowflake hands. One detail I really like about this 008 is if you look closely at the centre of the second hand above the cannon pinion, you can see it has a mirror polished cap to it. Now this is something that other San Martin models don't always have. For example, in the centre of the second hand on my 006, it doesn't have that mirror polished cap. It actually has a divot in the centre, and I actually like the way it catches the light. It's a subtle detail, but it really is outstanding to see it at this price point. The silver applied indices are finished to a very high standard. I like the symmetry of the dial with the absence of a date complication, as per the Black Bay 58, which this is an homage to. The dial is matte blue, but it has a glossy metallic finish to it. It has a sheen to it, even though it's matte rather than being enamel blue, and I really like the colour tone match. San Martin deserve full credit because they've actually done a better job than Tudor themselves. One thing I dislike about the Black Bay 58 in blue, which I've previously reviewed, is the dial is a lighter matte blue than the aluminium bezel insert. There's a mismatch between the lighter blue dial and the darker blue, midnight blue aluminium bezel insert. San Martin have got it correct because the colour tone of the dial matches the blue ceramic bezel insert better. They look more similar in tone, and I really like that aspect, the fact they've got the blue tones correct. The snowflake hands are mirror polished to a very high standard, and also like the proportions because the minute hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring. The snowflake second hand also extends all the way to the chapter ring, so the proportions are correct. This is something that Chinese brands within the low tier often get incorrect. The hands are often too small and undersized, and this is something one often sees with Pagani design, for example. The hands are too small for the size of the dial and the proportions of the piece. But however, San Martin make it right, so they get it correct with the proportions. The size of these snowflake hands is appropriate to the dial. I also like the fact it has the silver applied hex emblem at 12 o'clock, and the dial isn't over-branded with unnecessary text or specification. We simply have automatic and 200 meters at 6 o'clock, so just the right amount of information. With regards to the bezel, it's coin edge finished, and the coin edge finishing has a large coin edge profile to it. It's almost like a gear cut bezel. Now personally I prefer if it were lower profile as per the Black Bay 58 coin edge bezel, but it is finished to a high standard with a nice brush satin finish chamfer machines to the edge, and I like the glossy finish to the blue ceramic bezel insert. So let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel as one would expect. Nice loud audible clicks to the 120 clicks. In terms of resistance, it feels lighter than a Steinhardt Ocean 139, which you may be familiar with, but heavier than a Rolex Submariner, and I like the feeling of it. I also prefer the lighter indexing of the 120 clicks versus the 60 click unidirectional bezel of the Black Bay 58, which this is an homage to. I prefer the finer clicks of 120 versus 60 clicks. So, no lateral side-side play whatsoever, no back play whatsoever. This is a good, tight, well-executed bezel. So the resistance is correct. It's just the right balance between being tight and loose, but there is no back play and no lateral side-side play. And the alignment of the Lume Pippin triangle at 12 o'clock perfectly aligns with the 12 o'clock index on the dial. So this is 10 out of 10 bezel execution. With regards to the crown, it's coin edge finished. And one of my favourite details is the update from using the S crown, which looks like a US dollar symbol, to using the embossed San Martin hex. The San Martin hex is finished to a high standard, mirror polished, beautifully embossed and engraved, as you can see. And I really like the matte bead blasted background to it. The emblem itself is mirror polished, no sharp edges to it. Absolutely gorgeous to look at, a really good enhancement. This is something I would like to see San Martin implement in all their models across their collection. The use of the hex logo for continuity between the applied hex logo on the dial and also the applied hex embossed on the clasp. As you can see, the continuity of San Martin's hex logo in the three positions. So let's test the action of the screw down crown. The screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 200 meters of water resistance. Absolutely silky smooth, nice firm resistance to it, but it feels smooth. One can feel the friction of the rubber O-ring inside the stainless steel crown and the second rubber O-ring inside the stainless steel crown tube, providing the hermetic seal to 200 meters. So absolute pleasure to unscrew. So the PT5000 is a date complication movement, and therefore it does have a phantom date setting position. In the first position, it's the manual wind position, and one can manually wind the caliber PT5000 to top it up to its maximum 40 hours. Feels very similar to an ETA 2824-2 or alternatively a Salita SW200-1. And I like that firm resistance of the mainspring. One can gradually feel the tension building up to its maximum 40 hours. Pulling it out to the first click position is a phantom date setting position. As I've detailed, the date wheel is present underneath the dial, so one can feel it clicking over when rotating the crown, so that's something to bear in mind. Pulling it out to the second click position is the final position, and that is the time setting position. If you look at the Snowflake second hand, you can see I have now hacked the movement. The PT5000 has hacking, so one can set the time precisely to the second. Absolutely silky smooth, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. Very similar resistance to the ETA 2824-2, which the PT5000 is a clone of. So I really like it. No backplay whatsoever, clockwise and anti-clockwise in setting the time. And I like that smooth feeling. One can feel the friction of the gearing, but it does feel smooth, and it is a pleasure to set the time. Pushing it back in restarts the movement, as you can see, and it's got a nice positive click. Now, screwing it back in does take some pressure against the winding stem because it is highly spring-loaded, and that does take some getting used to. The PT5000 has a characteristic where it has more of a spring-loaded action than the SW200-1 and the ETA 2824-2, but however, once one gets used to it and pushing it in with some force, there is immediate thread pickup between the screw down crown and the thread on the stainless steel crown tube, so I like it. It's smooth, firm resistance to it, the quality of the machining of the threads is excellent. With regards to the Caseback, it's sterile, and one can see the concentric CNC lathe tool machining, which refracts the light. I really like it. Looks very similar to the sterile Caseback on a Black Bay 58. Very low profile, and this is one thing I like about the PT5000. Although this screw down Caseback provides 200 meters of water resistance, it is low profile and perfectly flat, so it sits very close to the wrist, and it gives the watch a very snug fit. No sharp edges to it, and it's also coin edge finished. And I like the fact it's sterile because it's perfectly flat and smooth against the wrist. It feels very comfortable. The female pivoted end links are very well finished and a good tight fit to the head of the piece. No sharp edges to the underside of the flanks. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and one thing I really like about San Martin watches is they fit my 8-inch wrist to perfection without any resizing. They have just the right amount of links. And as you'll know from my previous reviews, I like to size my bracelets loose so that I can always fit an index finger underneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. This allows for wrist expansion in warmer weather or when one is active. So perfect fit if you like to wear the watch loose. This will fit up to an 8-inch wrist, no problem whatsoever. Now, with regards to the proportions, this is perfection personified. 40mm head of the piece is the perfect size of watch, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist or a 7 to 8-inch wrist, respectively. As you'll know from my previous reviews, I consider 48mm to be perfection. It is the sweet spot for lug-to-lug measurement, regardless of whether you have a 7 to 8-inch wrist or a 6 to 7-inch wrist, respectively. 48 is the perfect lug-to-lug measurement. So 40mm head of the piece by 48 lug-to-lug, good snug fit to the wrist. Now, as I've discussed, the V1 had male end links, which made the effective lug-to-lug measurement too long. The female pivoted links are better because they pull the end link of the oyster-style bracelet snug to the wrist. One has that extra articulation. This is something that the V1 with the male end links didn't have. So one doesn't get an abhorrent gap underneath the end of the lugs, as you can see, as per the Ocean 139, for example. It really does curve around the wrist very well, and I actually think the fit of this 008 is superior to the Black Bay 58, which it is an homage to. I absolutely love the silver applied indices and the mirror polished snowflake hands. They complement the San Martin applied hex logo. The blue tinted AR coating does an excellent job. Double dome sapphire crystal projects above the ceramic bezel insert. It just looks absolutely gorgeous on wrist. One detail I really like is the large machined bevels on the edge of the case, which mark the transition between the tops of the lugs and the flanks. Just absolutely gorgeous looking piece. Now, the lug width is correct. 20mm lug width, and the oyster bracelet tapers from 20 down to 16. So again, they've got the corrections, the dimensions, the proportions correct. 20 to 16 is perfect for a 40mm head of the piece. So the fit is excellent, the comfort level is excellent, the feel good factor is excellent. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This is BGW9 Superluminova, and one can clearly see this is 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 on the applied indices and also the snowflake hands. I like the snowflake pip, which is on the sweeping second hand. The orientation of the dial is good. One can clearly orientate where 12 o'clock is because of the triangle at 12 o'clock, and then we have rectangle indices at 9, 6 and 3. The snowflake hands are glowing incredibly brightly, as are the indices. Perfect colour match in terms of the blue tone of the BGW9 between the Lume pip on the ceramic bezel insert, the applied indices and the snowflake hands. This really is equal in quality to Rolex Chromolite, or alternatively the BGW9 Superluminova used on the Black Bay 58. Just incredible, 10 out of 10 performance. It's good to see San Martin haven't cut any corners with regards to the quality of the Superluminova used. BGW9 is a personal favourite of mine, as you'll know from my previous reviews, and this really is exactly the same quality of performance as Seiko Lume-Bright and Rolex Chromolite. In terms of brightness and in terms of the length of time it glows, it really is top grade. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. You'll all be familiar with the PT5000. It's produced by HK Precision Technology in China. It's been in use since 2018, so at this stage it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. The PT5000 is a clone of the ETA 2824-2, so the architecture of both movements is identical. It has 25 joules and it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable, and it has hand binding and hacking, which use for complications. The stated accuracy of the PT5000 is plus or minus 12 seconds per day. Now I'm pleased to report that San Martin are well regulating the PT5000s they're using. This one is running consistently at plus 1 second per day when fully wound to its maximum 40 hours. That is incredible accuracy for a PT5000. So it is possible to regulate the PT5000 to within chronometer limits, which are -4 to +6. At +1, this actually exceeds Rolex superlative chronometer limits of ±2 seconds per day. So outstanding accuracy, and the reliability of the PT5000 is every bit as good as the SW200-1, alternatively the ETA 2824-2. Now I want to clarify something. Often the PT5000 comes in for undue criticism from collectors because of unreliability issues. They have problems with things like manual winding being too stiff, or alternatively sometimes the rotor spins when manually winding, which are defects. Now I want to explain why that is. There are several copies of the PT5000. The original is made by HK Precision Technology in China, and they are the movements used, the HK Precision Technology movements used by San Martin. However, other brands are using copies of the PT5000. The problem with the copies is variable quality control, build quality and materials, and also they're poorly regulated and poorly lubricated. Often the manual wind problems, the friction and the stiff feeling of the manual winding comes from the winding gears not being correctly lubricated. With HK Precision Technology PT5000s, they do correctly lubricate the winding gears, and therefore they have a smoother winding action. So I can reassure you that San Martin are using original HK Precision Technology PT5000s. They're not using copies as per other brands, and therefore they don't suffer with the same difficulties. So I would say to you, the genuine PT5000s are every bit as reliable as the SW200-1 and the ETA 2824-2. Reliable, well-proven workhorse movement, and it can be regulated to within chronometer limits of -4 to +6. +1 from this one is outstanding. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. Really, to evaluate this piece, one has to study the finishing of the piece throughout. The quality of the finishing to the coin edge finish bezel is outstanding. The ceramic bezel insert is outstanding. Just look at the luster to the flanks of the case, longitudinal brush satin finishing. This is absolutely flawless. This is the kind of finishing one would expect to see on a mid-tier piece costing in excess of €3,000. To get this on a low-tier piece costing $339 is just incredible. The luster of the longitudinal brush satin finishing is incredible, and in terms of the finishing to the head of the piece, it's very close to a Tudor Black Bay 58, which this is an homage to. I absolutely love the large bevel machined on the edge of the case, which marks the transition between the tops of the lugs and the flanks. Flawless mirror polishing to it, no sharp edges, no burrs. Just absolutely incredible. The case back is finished to an outstanding finish, and the clasp, which is one of my favourite aspects, is just finished to perfection. Beautiful luster to the 316L grade stainless steel, and flawless mirror polishing to the bevel on the edges. Now, in terms of the bracelet, it's very well executed, and one of my favourite aspects is the use of female pivoted end links, which is something the V1 didn't have. The V2 did have it, but it had a rivet link bracelet. Now, this is subjective. Some collectors like the rivet link bracelet because it's like the Tudor Black Bay 58. Personally, I prefer the oyster style bracelet as per the Rolex Submariner rather than the Black Bay 58, which has rivet links. Beautiful luster to the brush satin finishing, flawless mirror polishing to the flanks, and we have screw pins rather than using push pins. Now, some collectors have requested I comment on the fit of the end links. The end links on this 008 are a good tight fit to the case. As you can see, there's a slight undercut as per the Black Bay 58, so that's correct. And they are a good tight fit to the case. There's no play. I'll just check the other one. Again, good tight fit. There's no play. And in terms of the female pivoted end links, they articulate smoothly, and they're also a good tight fit. And I really like that extra articulation because the end link of the bracelet can pull underneath the case, close to the wrist, which is better than a male end link. In terms of the links, they're a good tight fit. The screw pins are a good fit. It's not a slack or sloppy bracelet. It doesn't rattle. Very similar in quality to a Tudor Black Bay 58 bracelet in terms of finishing, build quality, quality control and materials. I like the use of screw pins, and I really like the use of 4 micro adjustment holes. So are there any negatives to the watch? Well, none whatsoever. This is the perfect daily wear piece, and I think they've refined everything. They've made correct decision after correct decision with the V3, because we have the hex logo, which was the negative of the V2. It had the S. And also we have the oyster bracelet, which the V2 had a rivet link bracelet, and the V1 had male end links. This had female pivoted links. So the V3 is the ultimate 008, and this is one of the greatest San Martin watches ever made. So yes, it's excellent quality, and yes, it's excellent value. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I like this watch so much, in fact, I've decided to add it to my own personal collection, which is one of the highest compliments I can pay a watch. I've reviewed over 200 watches on my channel. This is one of the best watches I've reviewed. It's one of the greatest San Martin watches ever made. There are no negatives to this. It is perfection personified. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the San Martin SN008-G V3. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.